Hey everyone, it's Kate at The Confident Stitch, and today I'm going to show you how to make a single welt pocket. I'm using the Grainline Studio Tamarack jacket in my example, but all the tips and tricks I'm giving you will help you make any single welt pocket with any pattern you're using. So let's get started. Okay, the first step is to get your pattern pieces ready, which includes interfacing your welt. Hopefully you can see that I've got some interfacing ironed to the welt. I used our Perfect Fuse shear from Palmer Pletch. It's a great interfacing because it adds structure without really adding any weight to the fabric. You're also gonna mark your pocket placement dots on your top pocket and on the front of your jacket. I have created a small little front so that I can show you everything. The right side of the front is blue and the wrong side is yellow. And on the jacket front, you're gonna want to actually connect the two pocket placement dots with a line. And then you're going to draw a line 1/4 inch above that line and extend it about 3/4 of an inch on either side of the dot. And then we're going to draw another line 1/4 inch below, extending it a little bit as well. And then you're going to draw 2 lines right through the pocket placement dot and perpendicular to your first 2 lines. So, and these extend about 3/4 of an inch as well. Let me make sure that I'm perpendicular here. So one of the tricky things about a welt pocket is that you really do need to be precise. So after you draw those lines, you're going to want to hand baste through all layers along the lines. I used our 100-weight silk thread. I love this thread because it is so slippery and it pulls right out even if you end up sewing over it. I always double it on my needle because otherwise it'll slide right out of the eye of the needle. And magically, I have already basted this one. So this is what it looks like from the right side, and then from the wrong side, you can see the welt rectangle really well. So now we're gonna prepare the welt to the welt itself, which is this piece, by folding it right sides together, hot dog style. I'm gonna pin it in place. And then we're gonna head over to the sewing machine and sew the short edges at 1/2 inch. All right, we're gonna sew these 2 ends at 1/2 inch. Oops, I'm gonna use a regular 2.5 stitch length. Oh, the back stitch on this machine is really different. Okay, I sewed the 2 short ends, and now we want to clip the corners and grade the seam allowances, which just means making one of the seam allowances shorter than the other, like that. Okay, and now I'm going to turn the welt right side out. I'll move my mock jacket out of the way. and I want to make sure that these two corners are poked out. I like to use my little mini ruler for this because then I won't poke too hard and make a hole. So I am going to press this. Not perfect, but we're going to call it good enough for this example. And now I want to draw a line at 1/4 inch from the raw edge. Okay, the next step is to put the welt right sides together with the pocket placement. I'm lining up the raw edge of the welt with the pocket placement line that I drew. And this 1/4 inch line is going to line up with my original basting. And we're going to hand baste the pocket welt to the pocket. And I do that by putting the thread or putting the needle in this mark and then making sure that it also lines up with my previous basting and that everything is exactly right. This is the key to a beautiful welt pocket. So I'm gonna get this sewn on and I'll meet you back here when it's ready. Okay, I have basted my welt to the pocket opening. And remember, you can always ask questions in the comments below and I will be happy to answer them. The next step is to take the top pocket bag that we have marked our pocket placement dots on and put it wrong sides together with the right side of the jacket, lining up these pocket placement dots. So I'm going to put a pin through this one and then put a pin through the pocket placement dot on the jacket. Make sure those are lined up. And then I will put a pin through this one and then another one through the jacket. And then I'm going to hold it out of the way up here. And I'm going to turn it over and you can see my rectangle. And I'm going to actually move these pins from the right side. Actually, I'll do this and then pin it in place because I'm going to sew it from the wrong side. Let's make sure everything is lined up. I'm going to flip it one more time. Yep, looks good. All right, the next step is to sew around this basted rectangle. And you want to start in the middle of one of the longer edges. And I've increased my stitch length to 3.0 because I'm making a quilted jacket. And but if you're just making a regular jacket, you won't have to increase your stitch length. So here we go. So we really want to be exactly along the basting stitches. Back stitching, taking it really slow. Because I'm doing this pocket on camera, I got a little bit off on this edge So I drew a new line. So I am going to stop with my needle down right where I want to pivot. I actually want to go just a tiny bit further. There we go. I'm going to lift my foot, pivot, and now I'm going to count the number of stitches along this short edge. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 stitches, and now I'm going to pivot again. Oops, I think I want to do about 5.5 stitches. I'm going to hand crank it. There we go. There. And now I'm going to sew along these other basting stitches. It is not my nature to be this precise, but I have learned that when making a welt pocket, it's really important. So I'm going to do, oh, it's coming like half a stitch away. Okay, pivot. Now I'm going to do 5.5 stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see. I think that's, yeah, I think that's, no, it's not. I'm going to do one more by hand and head back. And back stitch again. And cut the thread. All right, so now comes the scary part, the time to cut, and let's head back to the overhead. Okay, here is my welt rectangle from the wrong side and from the right side. And now, oops, before I cut, I like to mark the 1/2 inch on from the short edges, because then you're going to cut right along the middle through all the layers, start at the center, and then go to the 1/2 inch mark, and then you're going to cut a little triangle to, but not through, your stitches. And you really, it needs to go right to the stitches, or else it'll be puckered on the other side. And I use these bigger Kai scissors because I have some good leverage and they close all the way to the very end. So if you're struggling with actually snipping through all the layers, you can snip one layer at a time. You can also consider buying some Kai scissors. They're super affordable and they work great. So after you've carefully snipped, you're going to put your pocket bag through the hole, and then you're going to press it flat and make sure that you can flatten out all the corners, and you don't need to clip in a little farther. So this step does take a minute, and you do have to spend some time on it because it's kind of the key to a beautiful welt pocket. Get everything pressed really nicely. And let's look at it from the right side and make sure that it looks good. So I'm gonna pull on the pocket bag a little bit so that it's not peeking out quite as much from the right side. But this will be covered up by your welt, so you don't have to worry too much. You just want it to be nice and flat on the right side and not puckery in the corners. All right, once you get everything flat, here I'm going to have my little welt poking right through there. You're going to top stitch along this edge. So let's head back to the machine. Okay, the pocket is still pointing up toward the neckline. It's kind of upside down. And we're just going to top stitch it in place. This, especially if you're using matching thread, this will be completely hidden by the welt. So don't worry about it being perfect. Okay, let's head back to the overhead. So here we are from the right side. We're going to flip it back to the wrong side and grab our bottom pocket. And we want it to line up with the top pocket, wrong sides together. And we're going to line up the straight edges of both pockets like this. Let's get this pulled out. There we go. And before I pin, I like to flip it. So you can just grab everything and flip it so that the seam allowance you sewed earlier is exposed. And I'm going to pin this way, which is not the way I usually do, but there's a lot of layers here. And now I'm going to go sew exactly on my previous stitches. So let's head back to the sewing machine. Okay, so now I'm going to sew right along my previous stitches. Want to make sure not to catch the jacket or really anything but the two pockets and this seam allowance. So I'm going to go a couple stitches, go back, and remove my pins. Back stitch a couple stitches and okay, we'll go back to the overhead. Okay, so here's where I just sewed, and I'm going to flip the bottom pocket bag down and press it in place. And now I'm going to fold down the top pocket bag and align the curved edges, and I'll press a crease in the new top of the top pocket bag. And I'm going to pin the two pockets together. My preferred way, perpendicular, with the balls facing out so they're easy to pull out later while you're sewing. And we're going to go to the sewing machine, and from the right side, you're just going to fold the jacket out of the way and also fold these little triangles out of the way. And we're going to sew at a 1/2 inch all the way around. So let's head to the sewing machine. Okay, here is the front of the jacket. I'm going to fold the jacket out of the way and this little triangle out of the way. And using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'm going to sew the pocket bags together. Back stitch. As you get to the curve, I'm going to set it so the needle stops in the down position. You might need to stop and pivot a little bit because it is a pretty sharp curve. Go all the way around. I'm a little over at the 5/8 inch area, but that is fine. Probably the only time while you're making a welt pocket that it's okay to not be completely precise. Back stitch a little and forward. Okay, the final step before some hand sewing is to sew these little triangles to the pocket bag, right exactly where you sewed before. So you want to fold the jacket out of the way, get right in there, and you want to go forward and back. You want it to be nice and secure because this really kind of holds your welt pocket nice and firmly and keeps it looking nice for years to come. Of course, I pulled out my thread in a very messy way, but I will trim my threads all the way, and you'll do that with the other triangle as well. And then we'll head over to the overhead for a couple last minute steps. Okay, we are done except for finishing the edges of the pocket bag, which you can do with a zigzag, or you can serge it, or you can use a bias binding. And then with this particular single welt pocket, you need to sew the welt to the edges here and here. You want to use a invisible hand stitch. I found in my practice ones, and this one a little bit, that sometimes the welt was a little bit far from this edge right here, and you'll just kind of want to stretch the fabric a tiny bit and secure it so that there's no gap on the side here. But that's the last step, and you will have a beautiful welt pocket. So welt pockets have a reputation of being really difficult, and they are a lot of steps. But if you slow down and follow the tips and tricks I shared in this video, I know you'll be successful. If you have any trouble, just let me know in the comments below and I'll help you out. If you missed my quilted coat video, I'll include a link to that right here and also in the description below. If you want to learn more about sewing and quilting, you can subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, everyone, and bye for now.